I want to tell you about a terrifying true story from Delhi NCR. It's a story that actually made national news, and for good reason. It's about how a dream apartment, the perfect find, turned into an absolute living hell for three friends. Let's piece together what really happened.
You know that old saying, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is? Well, for these three friends, that saying became terrifyingly real. So how did their dream home become a trap they couldn't escape? That's what we're gonna figure out.
Okay, so we're gonna do something a little different here. Instead of starting at the beginning, we're jumping right into the climax, a moment of pure, unfiltered terror. This will show you just how high the stakes had become for everyone in that apartment.
So picture this. You've got the three friends and a girlfriend, all just hanging out in one of the bedrooms, talking. And then this smell hits them. Something is definitely burning. And it's not just a little smoke, it's this thick, awful smell, and it's getting stronger by the second. Naturally, one of the guys gets up, rushes to the door to see what's on fire. But just as his hand reaches for the doorknob, bam, the door slams shut right in his face. And it's not just closed, it's locked. It feels like someone is physically holding it shut from the other side. And that's when the panic really kicks in. And this is the part that is just horrifying. Thick black smoke starts pouring in from the crack under the door, and it's starting to fill the room. They're banging on the door, they're screaming for help, but they're completely and utterly trapped inside as their own apartment burns around them.
So they finally get rescued by their other roommate, Alok, who wasn't in the room. They all run to the kitchen, and what they find, it just makes no sense. Simi, the girlfriend, she swears she left the gas on a low simmer, but the flame is roaring on high. The pan is completely scorched black. But here's the craziest part. The potatoes and spices she was cooking? Gone. Vanished. There was nothing left in the pan but a thin layer of fine ash.
So let's just recap. A door that locks itself, a fire that starts on its own, and food that just disappears into thin air. None of this adds up, right? To figure out what was really going on in apartment 13B, we have to rewind. We're going back 2.5 months to the day these friends first moved in.
All right, so let's set the stage. We've got our three guys, Arjit, Raman, and Alok. They're all fresh out of engineering college, ready to start their new jobs and new lives. First thing they need? A place to live. And boy, did they find one that seemed perfect. Almost too perfect.
And this is why they jumped on it. 11,000 rupees a month for a fully furnished, 3-bedroom apartment in Greater Noida. We're talking TV, fridge, beds, the whole shebang. They figured they just hit the jackpot. I mean, the only reason they could think of for the low price was that the area was still kind of under construction.
For the first couple of months, everything was great. They were loving it, living the perfect bachelor life. But one night, they're having a party, they run out of alcohol, and Archit and Alok decide to make a late-night run on a motorcycle. They're on this dark, pretty empty service road. When out of absolutely nowhere, Archit swerves the bike hard and crashes them right into a tree. They're both pretty banged up. Later, Archit kept insisting, "I saw a woman. She was just standing in the middle of the road. I had to swerve." But Alok, who was riding right there with him, saw nothing. Nobody. Their friends just brushed it off. "Man, you must have been drunk." But for Archit, this was the very first sign that something was seriously wrong.
And then, as if things weren't strange enough, the COVID-19 lockdown hits. Now they're literally trapped. They can't go to work, they can't go home, they're stuck inside this apartment 24/7. And that is when things went from just being weird to being genuinely terrifying.
It started with just a feeling, you know? That heavy sense that you're constantly being watched, even when you're alone. But then things escalated. One night, a massive carom board they had in the hall just flips over with this huge crash. Then they started hearing it. Footsteps running frantically up and down the hall when they were all in their own rooms. The TV would switch itself on, and then it got physical. One night, Raman tried to leave his room, and an invisible force just threw him backwards onto his bed.
So as all this crazy paranormal stuff is ramping up, the whole vibe in the apartment just gets toxic. Archit and his girlfriend Simi, who is over a lot, they started fighting all the time over the dumbest things. The air was just thick with all this negative energy, and it all came to a head one horrifying night.
Archit had a dream. And I'm not talking about a regular weird dream. This was lucid. It was terrifyingly vivid. In the dream, he gets into this horrible, violent fight with Simi. He gets so filled with rage that he picks up a huge stone and smashes her face with it, over and over, until she's dead. And in the very next moment, he sees himself hanging from the fan in the bedroom ceiling. He woke up in a total panic, just drenched in sweat. And he said this thing that's so chilling. He said, "It didn't feel like I was watching a dream. It felt like I was the one doing it, like it was my hands." That was it. That was the last straw. They knew they had to get out of there.
They didn't even waste time. They found a new place and were out within a week. But the questions, they just haunted them. Weeks later, they went back to their old building to visit some friends, and they decided, you know what, we have to talk to the one person who might have some answers. The building's security guard.
At first, the guard was playing dumb. Nope, don't know anything about that apartment. But they kept pressing him, and you could see him start to crumble. He finally broke down and told them the whole story. The apartment's first owners were a married couple, and their marriage was a complete disaster. Constant violent fights, screaming matches. Both of them thought the other was cheating. It got so bad, the wife told her brother she was scared her husband was actually going to kill her. And one night, he did.
During one of their drunken arguments, the husband grabbed a ciabatta, which is a really heavy traditional stone pestle they use for grinding spices, and he bludgeoned his wife to death right there in the hall. And this is where every single piece clicks into place. And it is absolutely bone-chilling. Look at this. Arkit's dream wasn't a dream at all. It was a replay. The fight, the murder with a large heavy stone, the suicide by hanging from the fan in that exact master bedroom. Every single detail from his nightmare perfectly matched the real-life murder-suicide that happened in that apartment.
And if that isn't terrifying enough for you, here is the final nail in the coffin. The husband's sister, who took over the apartment, she just rented it out, immediately, without changing a single thing. They had been sleeping on the same bed sheets, using the same furniture, living under the very same fan from which that man had hanged himself.
So, what in the world was actually happening in that place? Was it a conscious ghost trying to repeat its own violent history with new victims? Or is it possible for a place to become so saturated with tragedy, with so much negative energy, that it can literally project its own history, its memories, into the minds of the people living there? A ghost reliving its past, or a building replaying a memory? That's the terrifying question this whole story leaves us with.